It was a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that felt like a placeholder for something else, when the quiet hum inside me finally snapped. My mother, Alara, was holding court in her usual spot at the head of the dining room table, a half-eaten plate of lukewarm chicken and overcooked green beans before her. Her voice, a practiced instrument of passive-aggressive martyrdom, cut through the clinking of forks and the low murmur of conversation. "Honestly, Lyra," she sighed, directing her gaze at me, but her words were for everyone. "I just don't know what we'd do without you. Caleb certainly isn't going to step up, and Willow has her own life, doesn't she?" Caleb, my younger brother by 2 years, grunted from across the table, his eyes glued to his phone. He'd barely looked up since arriving, except to complain about the meal and ask if I'd remembered to transfer the money for his car insurance. Willow, my older sister, offered a tight, knowing smile, her eyes flicking between me and our mother. Her smile was always a weapon, sharp and precise. Our father, Arthur, sat at the other end, silently dissecting his chicken, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond the window, as if the suburban backyard held more interest than the emotional battlefield unfolding indoors. He was a master of absence, even when physically present. This was our ritual, played out countless times over the years. A casual family dinner, no special occasion, just another Tuesday. And, like every other Tuesday, it was less about connection and more about delegation. Delegation of responsibility, delegation of emotional labor, delegation of financial burden, all of it, invariably to me. I was Lyra, the quiet one, the smart one, the one who always had a plan, a solution, a spare $100, the one who, despite being the most capable, was also the most easily overlooked. I was the family's invisible scaffolding, holding up their crumbling structures, patching their leaks, and absorbing their emotional debris. For years, I had accepted this role, not out of grand selflessness, but out of a desperate, unspoken hope that if I just fixed enough, gave enough, absorbed enough, they would finally see me. Not as a resource, but as a person, as their daughter, their sister. The inciting incident, the moment the quiet hum snapped, wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was far more insidious, a slow, deliberate twist of the knife that had been lodged in my side for decades. "The roof, Lyra," Alara continued, her voice now laced with a theatrical tremor. "It's just getting worse. Arthur says it's going to cost a fortune, and you know we can't afford that right now, not with Caleb's situation." She gestured vaguely towards Caleb, who still hadn't looked up from his phone. His situation was a euphemism for his chronic unemployment, his mounting debts, and his uncanny ability to find new and creative ways to spend money he didn't have. I had already paid for Caleb's last 3 months of rent, his phone bill, and a significant chunk of his credit card debt. I had also just covered the cost of a new water heater for my parents last month. My savings, meticulously built over years of careful budgeting and hard work, were dwindling. I was a software engineer, earning a good salary, but it felt like I was pouring it into a bottomless pit. "I got a quote from a contractor, Mom," I said, my voice calm, almost unnervingly so. "It's going to be at least $15,000. I really can't cover that right now. I just paid for the water heater and Caleb's car insurance was due." Alara's perfectly manicured hand fluttered to her chest. "15,000? Oh, Lyra, you always exaggerate. And the water heater was a necessity. What are we supposed to do? Live with a leaky roof? Are you saying you'd let your own mother live in a house that's falling apart?" Her tone shifted, a subtle but unmistakable accusation. "After everything we've done for you?" Willow snorted, a small, almost imperceptible sound. "Maybe you should stop buying all those fancy coffees, Lyra, or those expensive organic groceries. You're always so careful with your money for yourself. But when it comes to family..." She let the sentence hang in the air, a judgment unspoken but clearly understood. Caleb finally looked up from his phone, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. "Yeah, Lyra. I mean, you're doing well, right? You always have money. Just put it on a credit card if you have to. It's family." He said family as if it were a sacred decree, an unassailable justification for any demand. My father, Arthur, cleared his throat. "Lyra, your mother has a point. It's just a roof. You're good with numbers, you'll figure it out." He offered a weak, placating smile, a smile that had always been his way of absolving himself of any responsibility. It wasn't the demand for money, though that was a significant part of it. It was the collective, casual dismissal of my efforts, my sacrifices, my very financial well-being. It was the assumption that my resources were their resources, my hard work their entitlement. It was Alara's manipulative guilt, Willow's cutting sarcasm, Caleb's brazen entitlement, and Arthur's spineless abdication. It was the complete and utter lack of recognition for the years I had spent bailing them out, emotionally and financially. In that moment, something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was a cold, clear realization, like a fog lifting to reveal a desolate landscape. I had spent my entire adult life trying to earn their love, their approval, their respect by being their fixer, and all it had earned me was more demands, more dismissals, and a deeper sense of exhaustion. The well was dry, and for the first time I understood that it wasn't my responsibility to refill it. I looked at each of them, truly looked, and saw not the family I desperately wanted, but the people who had systematically drained me, piece by piece, until there was almost nothing left. And in that quiet, ordinary Tuesday evening, a silent, profound decision solidified. I would stop. I would stop fixing. I would stop giving. I would stop being their invisible scaffolding, and I would do it quietly, deliberately, and without a single word of explanation. This wasn't revenge in the sense of wanting to inflict pain, but revenge in the sense of reclaiming myself. It was the quiet, powerful act of self-preservation. The drive home that night was different. The usual knot of anxiety in my stomach was gone, replaced by a strange, unsettling calm. It was the calm of a battlefield after the last shot has been fired, the quiet before the reckoning. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just drove, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind meticulously planning. The first step was the financial umbilical cord. This was the thickest, most tangled rope binding me to them. Caleb was the primary beneficiary of my financial generosity. Since he dropped out of college 3 years ago, citing creative differences with academia, he drifted from one short-lived gig to another, always with grand plans that never materialized. He saw me not as a sister, but as an ATM with a heart. His rent, his car payments, his phone, his endless business startup costs, all funneled through my accounts. My parents, particularly Alara, implicitly endorsed this arrangement, often praising Caleb's entrepreneurial spirit while subtly pressuring me to support his dreams. My parents themselves were not financially destitute, but they lived beyond their means, constantly making impulsive purchases and then feigning surprise when bills arrived. Alara had a penchant for expensive hobbies she quickly abandoned, and Arthur, while more frugal, never challenged her spending, preferring to retreat into his quiet hobbies. Their emergencies were often self-inflicted wounds, and I was always the one to patch them up, whether it was a sudden need for a new appliance or an unexpected car repair. The very next morning, before the sun had fully risen, I began. I logged into my online banking. The first automatic payment I canceled was Caleb's rent. It was due in 5 days, then his car payment due a week after that. His phone bill, set for auto-pay from my account, was next. I meticulously reviewed every recurring transfer, every bill that wasn't mine, and systematically severed the connections. My fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of it, the quiet rebellion. It felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I changed the passwords to any shared streaming services they were using under my account. I deleted their access to my cloud storage, where they'd been dumping endless photos and documents, treating it as their personal backup drive. These were small, almost invisible cuts, but they were symbolic. They were steps towards reclaiming my digital space, my resources, my ownership. The first call came from Caleb, predictably, 5 days later. My phone buzzed with an insistent rhythm. I let it ring and ring and ring. It went to voicemail. He called again, immediately, and again. My heart pounded, a drum against my ribs, but I didn't pick up. This was new territory. Usually I'd answer on the first ring, anxious to preempt any crisis. Now I just watched the screen, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. He left a furious voicemail. "Lyra, what the hell? My rent didn't go through. My landlord just called me, threatening eviction. What is wrong with you? Pick up the phone." His voice was a high-pitched whine, laced with genuine panic. The entitlement was so ingrained, so absolute, that the idea of me not paying his bills was an existential threat. I didn't call him back. Instead, I sent a brief text. "Caleb, I won't be able to cover your expenses going forward. You'll need to manage your own finances. I hope you understand." It was polite, firm, and devoid of emotion. I knew he wouldn't understand. He would explode. And he did. My phone lit up with a barrage of angry texts, accusations of betrayal, selfishness, being a bad sister. I muted his contact. Then came Alara. Her calls were more insidious. "Lyra, darling, are you all right? Caleb is so upset. He says you're not helping him anymore. Is everything okay? You know how sensitive he is. He needs your support. We all do." Her voice was a silken trap, designed to ensnare me with guilt. She didn't directly demand, not at first. She implied, she lamented, she played the worried mother, subtly shifting the burden of Caleb's distress onto my shoulders. I responded to her texts with equal brevity. "Mom, I'm fine. Caleb needs to learn to stand on his own 2 feet. It's time." The simplicity of the statement felt radical. For years, my responses had been elaborate justifications, apologies, promises to do better. Now it was just the stark truth. Willow, ever the observer, didn't call or text immediately. She waited, watching the chaos unfold. When she finally did reach out, it was with a text that read, "So you finally snapped, huh? Good for you. Or maybe not. You know they'll never let you forget this." Her sarcasm was a shield, but there was a flicker of something else beneath it. Perhaps a perverse admiration, or simply a confirmation of her own cynical worldview. I didn't respond. The initial days were a maelstrom of guilt and doubt. Every unanswered call, every unread text felt like a betrayal. My stomach churned. Had I gone too far? Was I being cruel? The years of conditioning, the ingrained belief that my value was tied to my utility to them, clawed at me. I kept replaying their words. "After everything we've done for you." What had they done for me? Provided a roof over my head, food on the table, the basic necessities of childhood. But they had also instilled in me the belief that I was responsible for their emotional well-being, that my achievements were theirs to claim, and my failures were theirs to lament. This was where Nova came in. Nova was my oldest friend, someone who had witnessed the slow erosion of my boundaries over the years. She was a therapist, which was both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because she understood the dynamics of dysfunctional families, a curse because she often saw through my self-deception before I did. I called her the day after Caleb's furious voicemail. "Nova," I said, my voice tight. "I did it." I cut Caleb off. And my parents. I just stopped. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then Nova's calm, steady voice. "And how do you feel, Lyra?" "Terrible," I admitted, a raw honesty I rarely allowed myself. Guilty, like a monster, but also lighter, like I can breathe for the first time in years. "That's the grief, Lyra," she said gently. "You're grieving the family you wished you had, and you're grieving the role you played for so long. And the guilt? That's the conditioning. They've trained you to feel guilty whenever you put yourself first. It's not real guilt, Lyra. It's manipulation." Her words were a balm. She didn't tell me what to do, she just validated my experience, naming the emotions I was feeling and explaining their origin. Over the next few weeks, as the family's reactions escalated, Nova became my anchor. The escalation was swift and predictable. Caleb, facing eviction, finally called my father, who then called me, his voice a strained plea. "Lyra, please, Caleb's in a bind. Just this once. He promises he'll pay you back." Arthur, the eternal mediator, always trying to keep the peace, always at my expense. "No, Dad," I said, my voice unwavering. "I've told Caleb I'm not covering his expenses anymore. He needs to figure this out." "But Lyra, he's your brother," he exclaimed, as if that simple fact negated all responsibility on Caleb's part. "And I'm his sister," I countered, "not his bank." The line went silent. I knew he was shocked. I had never spoken to him that way, never refused so unequivocally. Alara's tactics became more aggressive. She started calling my aunt, my grandmother, even distant cousins, weaving a narrative of my supposed cruelty. Poor Caleb. Lyra has just abandoned him. And the roof. She refuses to help us after all we've sacrificed. She's changed. She's so cold now. The whispers found their way back to me, through well-meaning but gossipy relatives. It stung, deeply. The image she was painting of me was a caricature, a villain. But I reminded myself that their perception was not my reality. Willow, true to form, didn't join the public shaming. Her approach was more direct, more personal. She started sending me articles about selfish millennials and family estrangement and its psychological toll. She'd occasionally text me, "Heard you're the family pariah now. How's that working out for you?" Her words, designed to needle, to make me doubt, sometimes hit their mark. I'd feel a pang of loneliness, a fear of being truly alone. But then I'd remember the years of her dismissive remarks, her subtle undermining, and the pang would subside, replaced by a quiet resolve. The worst was when they tried to sabotage my life. It started small. Caleb, in a fit of pique, posted a vague, accusatory message on social media, hinting at family betrayal and financial ruin at the hands of a close relative. It was ambiguous enough not to directly implicate me, but specific enough to raise eyebrows among our mutual acquaintances. I ignored it. Then, something more serious. I received an email from my bank flagging suspicious activity on one of my credit cards. Someone had tried to open a new line of credit using my social security number. It was a crude attempt, easily caught by the bank's fraud detection, but the implication was chilling. I immediately suspected Caleb. I had no proof, but the timing, the desperation, the sheer audacity, it fit his pattern. I filed a police report, changed all my passwords, and put a freeze on my credit. It was a stark reminder of the lengths they would go to, the complete disregard for my well-being, simply because I had ceased to be their resource. Through it all, Nova was my rock. She listened without judgment, offered practical advice, like freezing my credit, and most importantly, reminded me that I was not responsible for their choices or their reactions. "Their anger, Lyra," she explained, "is a symptom of their dysfunction. It's not about you. It's about them losing control over you, losing their primary source of supply. They're lashing out because their coping mechanisms are failing." We talked for hours, sometimes late into the night. She helped me reframe my actions not as revenge, but as self-liberation. "You're not doing this to them, Lyra," she'd say. "You're doing this for you. You're building a fence around your own well so you can finally drink from it yourself." The months that followed were a strange blend of agony and exhilaration. The guilt was a phantom limb, aching even when the connection was severed. There were days I missed the illusion of family, the comfort of the familiar, even if it was toxic. I missed the idea of a mother who truly cared, a brother who was a friend, a sister who was a confidant. But those moments were fleeting, quickly overshadowed by the profound sense of peace that began to settle over me. I started investing in myself in ways I never had before. With the money I was no longer funneling into their lives, I took a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had the time or mental space for. I started going to the gym consistently, feeling the strength return to my body, a physical manifestation of the strength I was building internally. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected, too busy managing my family's crises. I even started dating again, cautiously, learning to trust my own judgment and to recognize healthy boundaries in others. The calls from my family dwindled. Caleb eventually found a low-paying job, forced to support himself. My parents, after much complaining, finally took out a loan for the roof, a solution I had suggested months ago. Willow's sarcastic texts became less frequent, perhaps realizing her barbs no longer had the desired effect. I didn't cut them out of my life entirely, not in the sense of never speaking to them again. That felt too extreme, too final. Instead, I established a new, firm perimeter. I would answer their calls only when I felt emotionally prepared. My conversations were brief, transactional. I avoided any discussion of finances, Caleb's situation, or their latest emergencies. If they veered into those topics, I would politely but firmly redirect or simply end the call. "Mom, I need to go. I have a meeting." "Caleb, that's not something I can help with. I'm sorry." I attended family gatherings sparingly and for shorter durations. I no longer arrived early to help Alara set up or stayed late to help Arthur clean. I arrived, made polite conversation, and left before the emotional draining could begin. I observed them from a distance, like an anthropologist studying a strange tribe. They were still the same. Alara still played the martyr. Caleb still radiated entitlement. Willow still wielded her sarcasm like a weapon, and Arthur still retreated into his quiet world. Their dysfunction was a self-perpetuating machine, and I was no longer a cog in it. One evening, months after the initial break, I was sitting on my couch, a book open in my lap, a cup of tea steaming beside me. The apartment was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of the refrigerator. There was no urgent text to respond to, no panicked call to return, no looming financial crisis to avert. Just peace. I thought about the word revenge. It felt too harsh, too active. What I had done wasn't about inflicting pain on them. It was about severing the ties that were inflicting pain on me. It was about reclaiming my agency, my peace, my very self. It was about recognizing that I couldn't fix them, and that trying to do so was destroying me. The guilt still surfaced sometimes, a faint echo of the years of conditioning, but it was no longer a suffocating blanket. It was a whisper, easily dismissed by the steady, growing voice of my own self-worth. I had learned that love, true love, did not demand self-annihilation. It did not require me to set myself on fire to keep others warm. My family remained dysfunctional, locked in their familiar patterns, perhaps forever. But I was free. The quiet, overlooked girl who had spent her life fixing everyone else had finally fixed herself. And in that freedom, in that hard-won peace, I found a strength I never knew I possessed. It was the quiet strength of a woman who had finally learned to say no, to walk away, and to choose herself. And that, I realized, was the most profound revenge of all.